Simon, you're right on the front lines as a physician. And if you could also just share with the group a little bit of your background and then tell us what it looks like from there.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. I'm Simon Helfgott, and I'm speaking to you from the Boston area. I work over at Brigham and Women's Hospital and at Harvard Med School, where I'm involved in clinical care, teaching, and taking care of these patients has become a real challenge for the whole group of thousands of physicians, nurses, technicians, medical technicians. People of all stripes have come forward. I think the striking thing has been the fact that we were caught off guard so poorly nationally, and yet everybody has rallied in different regions of the country to really work and make this fantastic effort to help us mitigate and now control the disease, at least at the hospital level, but it's still quite a challenge, and it's a geographic distinction. So, for example, New York is a bit different than Boston, which is different than the West Coast. I think Tony Fauci said it best when he said that the virus is really the perfect construct. If you're a virus, this is like it. This is the perfection. You have a highly, highly contagious virus that we have no immunity for. So it's not like a flu, even a bad flu, where many of us have some recognition of some of the particles of protein that that virus has, so that we have some immune defense. We have none against coronaviruses. So that's problem number one. Number two, it's very, very contagious. It comes via the respiratory tract. It doesn't have to be through bodily fluid contact. It's a cough, it's a sneeze, it's a hand touch. So that is concerning. The fact that the virus can live on surfaces for days or up to days in some situations is another key factor in its transmission. So those things alone have created this perfect storm, if you will, that have allowed for the virus to transfer. And then what's striking, though, and paradoxical to this is the fact that we now are discovering so many people have had this virus asymptomatically. Or if you look at the data from Iceland, where they looked at just random, they have large studies looking at otherwise healthy people who've had nasopharyngeal swabs, and about 20 to 30% of the population seems to harbor the virus, and yet not that many people are sick. So that's the paradox. It can make you deathly ill, and it can also cause just a minor or no symptoms at all, and that's what we're struggling with. But at the hospital level, the key issue here is the way that this virus makes people sick. It doesn't infect people the way you might think a bad pneumonia does, for example. Somebody has a bacterial infection, they cough, they make sputum, they get a fever, they get in the hospital. Even if they have to go on a respirator, you give them antibiotics and it's a matter of a couple of days. And generally, if the patient's otherwise healthy, they'll survive. In this situation, the virus is not really infecting you as opposed to hijacking your immune system. And the way it leads to the person's demise is what we call cytokine storm, which is an entity that we're familiar with from Ebola, which is another terrifying virus. But Ebola killed individuals, again, not through overwhelming infection, but by hijacking all the chemical apparatus behind the immune system. So it will just turn it on full blast. It's as though it's hijacked your car and is driving 200 miles an hour into a brick wall. And that is what's happening to many of our patients. They are just manufacturing so many of these proteins and so many of these cytokines that are involved in autoimmune diseases, for example. Say rheumatoid arthritis is one example where we have high levels of interleukin-6. But when you get cytokine storm in a COVID patient, you're getting 20, 30, 40 times the level that we see in a patient with an autoimmune disease. And that's what's so striking. What we're also discovering is that that leads to activation of blood clotting factors, which has been a complete surprise, I think, to our teams. So we're dealing with patients now who have strokes at young ages. There's an actor on Hollywood who had his leg amputated that was in the news because, again, he had clots forming, again, by this overactivation of all the systems, because your immune system has been activated to, there's a crisis here, all hands on deck, but it goes in the wrong direction. Instead of slowing things down, it just accentuates it and accelerates it.